What took you so long?
And we're back. Man, I'm really running out of intros for these devlogs. So, a lot has changed since the last devlog. First things first though, before we start talking about that. As you've probably noticed by now, the old HNR download links have been taken down off the game.
Nothing.
And for those of you who can read, I mean, come on guys, it's right there. You'll already know why and where you can play them at. But in case you don't know, I took them down because I didn't think they accurately represented the current state of the game. Especially because I consider the current state of the game to be better than the legacy builds ever were. But before we really dive into those changes, I promise this is relevant to the game, so please don't skip ahead. I'd like to show you all something. This is the Alpha 2 house. A house that most people would agree is pretty good. It's detailed, decently sized, and not overly wacky, unlike the later houses. I like the Alpha 2 house. I think it works really well in-game, and it looks really nice. But my personal biggest issue with the house is the layout. I think it's mostly fine, but navigating to this side of the house is not easy if the neighbor is in the living room, and half the upstairs is completely inaccessible. And of course, the worst part, no garage. So, I took it upon myself to fix all of these issues. The upstairs wall has been smashed open, giving access to the previously unused room. This wall has been pushed back, which allows for a back entrance, as well as the storage room being turned into a hallway, which can now be used to access the other side of the house. And I know what you're thinking.
Where's the storage area gonna be now?
First off, shed. Secondly, remember how I mentioned a garage? Yeah, I made a garage. Yes, it's separate from the house. Also, if you haven't noticed, the wonkification of the house has been removed. But you may be wondering why I'm talking about the Alpha 2 house in a game primarily focused on the pre-Alpha house. I've always wanted to do multiple houses, but I struggled with thinking of a proper way to implement them. But then I remembered, these builds are not a completed game, and I'm free to do literally whatever I want with them. And that means adding stuff in for testing purposes. But mostly this came about because when Rewritten finally does drop, there are going to be a lot of people disappointed because it's more or less the same thing that you've experienced already. Sure, the AI and the house have had changes, but when it really comes down to it, it's just the same thing you've seen before. So, I thought, what better way to give you guys something new than the Alpha 2 house, the most overused house in Hello Neighbor fan games. But I need help deciding. The way I see it, I have 3 options. 1, I don't use the Alpha 2 house at all, which would basically nullify all my changes. But it would make Rewritten come out a lot faster because, you know, I don't have to worry about adding a whole second level. The second option is releasing Rewritten with just the Alpha 2 house. That way people can experience something new while I'm working on the layout for the second and third floors of the pre-alpha house. And of course the third option where I just let people pick whatever house they want to play in. Here's a mock-up of what that would look like in-game. Let me know what you'd like to see. Anyway, I have a lot of stuff I want to talk about here, so let's get into it. The AI has improved a lot. Now, if an object is blocking a neighbor's path, he'll kick it out of the way instead of just stopping and staring. Honestly, the reason this wasn't in the original version is just because I didn't know how to do it at the time, but I do now. Along with this, the neighbor has overall just gotten more intelligent. Of those tasks that he can pick from, several new ones have been added. Checking the mail, drinking out of a mug, both standing and sitting, each inspired by these 2 early screenshots. Mowing the lawn, and burning trash, inspired by something the guest did in early Hello Neighbor 2 versions. He doesn't necessarily have to burn it, he can also just take it out. And he can do both with boxes as well. And finally, the neighbor can water more plants than just flower pots. The neighbor will also move stuff back if he tries to use it and then realizes that it's in the wrong location. He'll only do this for major objects though. Things like TVs and radios he'll always notice aren't in their right positions. He can even open the garage now. Idle isn't completely done yet, and it's probably the least interesting thing I have to talk about in this video. But before we move on to Hunt Mode, here's a list of other changes to Idle Mode that I didn't think were worth dedicating time to talking about. Hunt Mode is more or less the same, with the added bonus that the neighbor now checks hiding spots proportional to how often you hide in them. Meaning if you continue to hide in this wardrobe, he'll check it more often than the others. Same with hiding under the bed. The neighbor now also has the ability to set up more than just bear traps in Hunt Mode. He can now also set up bucket traps, which have been improved and I'll talk about later, and he can also board up windows. The neighbor also has a chance to latch the back door or lock the front door upon going inside when he is searching. Ah yes, the neighbor can also search outside in Hunt Mode as well. And last but not least for Hunt Mode, the neighbor can now break doors off of wardrobes when he ambushes the player from within them. Yes, just like this one screenshot. The way the neighbor attacks has also been entirely changed. If the neighbor does not see you for a short period of time, he will now try to predict where you're going to go. And if he doesn't see you there, he will lose you and go into Hunt Mode. The system is still pretty early along and it has its issues, but so far it's doing its job in making the neighbor more unpredictable and harder to escape. Also, if the neighbor hears a sound, like a camera, while he doesn't have sight of you, he will instead go towards the sound. Prediction is honestly something I'm really proud of. As I said, it's still early in development and I'm still testing it out. But that being said, knowing it's something I was able to do on my own gives me a lot of confidence for what I'll be able to do with attack mode in the future. Unfortunately, the house only having one floor is very restrictive, but as the other floors get added, his AI will be worked on with the new floors in mind. Now, I've saved offline mode for last. mainly because it's the last one sequentially, but I also think it's the most interesting, so lock in. Firstly, house variations are back. Not in the same way as before, though. Now, rather than changing layouts only after the nightmare, as in the actual pre-alpha and HNR Legacy, now they can change after getting caught a few times. Also, layout changes are not linear, meaning different rooms may or may not change layouts at different times. Some may start with a different layout, some may not. Some room variations may also change the location of important items, as well as giving the neighbor something else to do. For example, when the bedroom is in this variation, the neighbor can watch TV while sitting on his bed. Some house variations are also tied where the player chooses to go. Like this table around the back of the house that can often be used to block the neighbor can be moved and placed in the hallway, which not only opens up the backyard, but also allows that table to block this door if you go through it too much. Bear traps are more or less the same, except now they spawn with a random rotation. Ooh, I'm sure that's what you've all been waiting to hear. They now also have a tip that pops up telling you to spam space to get out. Graphics for this were of course made by my UI element person, Aether. And get this, bucket traps actually do something now. If you manage to get doused in water, your sensitivity will drastically increase, making it quite difficult to make precise movements. The neighbor still doesn't hear this, but if you accidentally open a door with a bucket trap while you're being chased, good luck. Cameras can now be picked up, which was highly requested, but only after they've been broken. Hallway barricades are back in mostly the same way, but of course have had some changes. As you can see, this one here uses the nearby wardrobe as a part of it. Chair traps have been slightly changed. As you can see, any kind of chair in the neighbor's house can spawn blocking a door instead of just the regular chair. Chairs also now have different strength values, which will determine how many times the neighbor has to bash the door for it to open. The armchair holds for 4, the red chair, old chair, regular chair, and rocking chair all last for 3. Oh yeah, the rocking chair can also block doors now. And the broken red chair only lasts for 2. The front door is now unique in that it will never spawn with a chair blocking it. Instead of being blocked by a chair, it'll just be locked. Obviously, if you get inside the house, the front door can be opened from the inside, which will unlock it. Honestly, I kind of only did this as a reference to the prototype, and also because, well, it's the front door of the house. It makes sense if it can be locked from the inside. Do note that the front door can be blocked by a chair normally by the player, but it just will never spawn with one. The neighbor also has a few new things he can do to screw you over. First off, a complaint that I got a lot was that the garage remote was too overpowered. All you needed to do was get it once, and now you have free permanent access into the neighbor's house that the neighbor has no way to counter. Now, if you continue to abuse the garage will be disconnected from the main power of the house and will instead run on a generator. And since the generator needs to be turned on, the garage remote will no longer work, and neither will the switch in the garage. On the bright side of this, that means that if the main power of the house is turned off, then you can still open the garage if the generator is turned on, although the neighbor can also hear when the generator is turned on, so yeah. And yes, power is back, and it actually works the way it's supposed to. Yeah, I didn't intend for the power boxes to make it into Alpha 1.4 like that. I was testing them out, and I just forgot to move them back below the ground. If you shut the power off, the neighbor will turn it back on before going back to doing whatever he was doing. It will not set him into hunt mode. And as well, if the generator is outside, it will also not set the neighbor into hunt mode. If it's inside the house, then it will set him into hunt, because, you know, obvious reasons. Of course, shutting the power off can also be abused, so if you continue to do this, the power box will be locked, and the key to open it will spawn on the neighbor's belt. The doorbell was also something that was continuously abused, so I've changed that as well. If you spam the doorbell, the neighbor will eventually just ignore it, and the next time you get caught, you'll notice that the doorbell is now broken. Fun fact though, actually, during the neighbor's later states in the official pre-alpha, he too will just ignore the doorbell, which is actually where I got the idea to do this from, because I thought it was pretty cool. Also, while we're on the topic of distractions, I have added a new one, the microwave. Yes, I've heard your cries and pleas, so I finally added it. Basically, it works similar to the alarm clock, where after a certain amount of time, it'll beep, prompting the neighbor to investigate. And on the topic of clocks, clocks actually tick in real time now. Why? Because why not? Different times of day haven't been added yet, but I do plan to have the clock set to a believable time depending on that time of day. I like little details, what can I say? And speaking of little details... Okay, that's the last one, I promise. A lot more things have been made interactable and detailed. The knob on the microwave, the lid and the button on the stereo, the toilet lid and the handle, the switch on the flashlight, the alarm clock bell, all move or are interacted with. The generator button no longer lights up, and instead the light itself is used. The button still needs to be pressed, though. Which, I did actually see someone suggest that the whole generator should be interacted with, instead of just the button. But I do feel like what is interacted with is a little bit arbitrary, because right now, like, the TV, you can interact with any part of it, but with the microwave, it's just a knob, so maybe... I mean, if you guys want, I'll make it just so you have to interact with the object itself, not just the button. But, I mean, you know, let me know what you think about that. Trash cans and open boxes can have their lids placed on top. Plates now break. The stove head doors can now be opened. I have edited a few of the textures to give them more details and to throw in more references. I'm sure there's more, but you can see the rest when you play the game for yourself. Cars now drive past the neighbor and player houses when you're inside. You can make it to them if you run outside, but they have no collision, so you don't have to worry about getting hit by cars. This is an alternative reality. The neighbor's house has gotten some more changes, mainly these balconies, which were edited by Jacket, the back porch, and these windows in the bathroom, as well as an elevator. Wait. An elevator?
Bonnie fan, I thought you said you didn't like the elevator. What is this spineless behavior? I'm unsubscribing. Fuck you.
Before you stone me to death, hear me out for a second. My main reason for not including an elevator originally was due to me thinking it was unrealistic and too cartoony. But after learning that mansions in real life sometimes have elevators, I don't really think it's that unreasonable to include one. I mean, this is a mansion, and this part of the hallway was so empty, and nothing I put here I thought looked good, so I figured why not try out an elevator. Obviously, the elevator doesn't work right now since the house only has one floor, but it will be used in a later update. Hell, I might not even keep it when the house is finished. But that's the beauty of releasing development builds. You get to test things out, and if they don't work, then you scrap them. HNR is not a completed game, and won't be for some time, so why not experiment with some things? Anyway, here's the new pause menu. I've added some new settings, as you can see. The Alpha 2 crosshair that highlights upon hovering over something that can be interacted with has been made the default. But if you prefer the old crosshair, you can re-enable it with this setting. Use Legacy Inventory replaces the new Alpha 1 inspired inventory with the inventory used in HNR Legacy. 2-button throwing re-enables the pre-Alpha style throwing since the Alpha 1 style has been made the default. Of course, there's a sensitivity slider, probably one of the most requested features. The base sensitivity has also been lowered since I feel it was too high for most people. Okay, so that's all the preferences, but what about the extras? Why are they separate? Well, as you can tell by this little text blurb, these settings may or may not be removed in the future and are mostly here for feedback and testing. For example, chase music fade in does what it says, causing the chase music to start with a slight fade in, just like the prototype, wow. And this is just how the game was for a while, but I couldn't decide which one I liked more, so I'll leave it up to you guys to decide. Whichever one is more popular will become the default, and this setting will be removed. Maybe. I don't know. I do want to try to avoid bloating the settings with just a bunch of meaningless toggles. This also applies to the delayed chase music as well, which makes it so that the music doesn't start playing until you look in the direction of the neighbor. Keep neighbor outfit disables the ability for the neighbor to change clothes. Yeah, this is what I'm talking about when I say meaningless toggles. And last but not least, immersive mode. Explaining this doesn't go as far as just showing it, so here's a comparison. Also, I want to make it clear that immersive mode will never be the default, but I do want to include it as an option for people who prefer a more subtle atmosphere. Also, I figured I should mention this because I didn't earlier, but every single change that I've mentioned will also apply to the Alpha 2 house as well. So like certain offline mode things, like the generator with the garage, that will apply to the Alpha 2 house as well, since the Alpha 2 house, has a garage now. Okay, so we're wrapping up here, but I do have a few more things I want to talk about. First of those is a new door mechanic. I'm sure you know by now that I was not a fan of the peeping through keyholes mechanic, and I went out of my way to remove keyholes from every single door. So what mechanic could I have possibly added to replace that? If you interact with the door while crouched, the door will be cracked open slightly, allowing you to use this in conjunction with leaning to see into the next room. This is something I've seen suggested before, so I figured why not test it out. As a part of this, some doors in the neighbor's house can start cracked open. A slight rumbling sound has been added the closer you get to the neighbor, as seen in the announcement trailer. The pass-by sound effect that used to play if the neighbor walked past you while hiding in a wardrobe now plays if the neighbor walks past you while you are standing still. Wardrobes can now also be exited by only opening one door, again something seen in the announcement trailer. The lockpick now breaks after one use. I intend to add multiple locks later down the line, so I believe that this is the best way to prevent the lockpick from becoming overpowered. And I figured it playing a sound and having a unique model is better than it just vanishing. The code is now entirely random. Okay, well, not entirely, since I coded it in such a way that every digit in the code is unique. So you will not get a code that features more than one of the same number. So that's almost everything for the new stuff, at least I think. There is a lot. There might be some other things that I didn't mention that you'll experience firsthand when you play the game, so keep that in mind. Now, I want to talk a bit about stuff that I want to add in the future, something that I've surprisingly never done in a devlog before. Mostly because I like to keep my future plans a little bit secret, but I'll break that rule a little bit today. Now, as I've mentioned before, I want HNR to be a massive game. As of now, I want the pre-alpha house to be the main one, but I do also want to include others as well. Hence why I've made so many changes to the Alpha 2 house. I'm not going to talk about how more houses will fit into the game when it's complete, because right now, I don't know. But there will be more houses at some point. Tying into that, I also want to do like little extra mini-games or challenges of sorts. A little bit like mini-games from the first Plants vs. Zombies. Just little challenges that either shake up the gameplay a bit or give you something else to do after you beat the game. I'm not going to go into detail with what I have planned, because I like to keep those secret. But I will say one of them will be like a granny-inspired game mode where you have to break out instead of break in. Another one I have plans for, I imagine using a different house, but I won't give more details than that. Let's just say my game doesn't completely follow the old ideas for Hello Neighbor, so that leaves way to bring back some older concepts. Make of that what you will. Next up, I do have some ideas for nightmares, but I don't know if they'll actually make it in the game. I feel like nightmares have to have some significance in some way, like how the giant neighbor nightmare used to signify the neighbor is more aggressive. I would like for each nightmare to signify something new gameplay-wise, but I don't know if I'm actually going to do that or not. Because nightmares do have a habit of breaking the pacing of the game, and I feel like if they're going to do that, they have to have some significance, otherwise it's just boring. Okay, and to finish up this video, I have 2 more important things I want to bring up. Technically 3, actually. First, why is it daytime now? Why am I wearing a different outfit? Why do I have shelves now? Why do I keep looking over here instead of looking straight ahead? I have a second monitor now. Very cool. The footage you've been seeing of me throughout this video was recorded all the way back in December. It's February now. This video took a long time. On to the actual important stuff. First, I want to give a shout out to the 2 winners of the art competition that was held on my Discord server a few months ago. First place was of course done by Krabs, and second place was done by some guy called Jacket. Honestly, I think Jacket's perfectly captured what my daily existence feels like. A big thank you to both of them for submitting. It means a lot that you take time to create stuff for me. Alright, and the last thing I want to talk about is something a little bit more serious, but I think it needs to be said. I don't consider myself a member of the Hello Neighbor community, but being that I'm working on a Hello Neighbor fan game, obviously the Hello Neighbor community and my community have some overlap. And quite frankly, I'm disappointed with what I've seen. Obviously, having a community with no bad actors at all is nearly impossible, and to imagine such a scenario is incredibly naive. But at the very least, I think there should be some level of mutual respect for other people in a community. I don't think the Hello Neighbor community is very appreciative of people who take time out of their lives to make something for them. I'm trying to avoid any bias here as a Hello Neighbor fan game developer. I don't want to sit here and act like I'm underappreciated, but let me elaborate on what I mean. Even before developing HNR, I once saw a fan game or a mod I don't remember the name of, but I saw it get canceled because the developers were facing backlash and harassment due to it being buggy on launch. And of course, bugs should be criticized, but there should never be any level of aggression. You have to understand, the vast majority of people working on fan games are just starting out. And those who aren't are still human. They're likely to make mistakes. And I don't think they should be attacked simply because their game isn't up to some, high standard. If a AAA game comes out and it's buggy on launch, I mean, fair enough. Say whatever you want because, those games are made by massive companies that have billions of dollars and they just want to get the game out as fast as possible so they can make more money. There's higher expectations to be fulfilled with a AAA game. But for fan game developers who don't make any money, who are just making a game either for the experience or to give back to the community that they're a part of, I don't think they're very well appreciated. But of course, I think the opposite problem is also true. I've seen fan game developers get aggressive or passive-aggressive towards people who are just coming to them for advice. I feel like a lot of people who start working on Hello Neighbor fan games get this, ego as if they're, the greatest thing to ever grace Unreal Engine. I have a little bit over a year of experience in Unreal Engine, and at best, I'm a guy who can just put blueprints together and make something work in a probably very inefficient way. My point being, if I can learn Unreal Engine, almost anybody can. And I know there's someone watching this video right now probably thinking to themselves, yeah, there are a lot of dicks in this community, and not realizing that I'm talking about them. If you get annoyed with somebody because they don't understand something the first time you explain it to them, you're part of the problem. If someone makes a fan game, and your first thought is to focus on inconsequential nitpicks that do nothing to affect the overall quality of the game, you're part of the problem. If you take to insulting the developer of a game simply because you don't like it and you don't agree with some choices that they made, you're part of the problem. Criticism is a good thing. It can help improve the quality of a product. But that criticism has to be delivered in the right way. There's 2 mentalities when it comes to delivering criticism. One is where you're like, well, I don't like this thing and I think it kind of, worsens the game overall, so let me tell the developer so that they can make their game better. And the other is like, man, that thing sucks. I can't wait to tell the developer so that they realize their game is terrible. I want to be very clear, I'm not specifically thinking of anybody in mind when I'm saying any of these things, I'm just speaking from stuff that I've seen and experienced firsthand. Anyway, yeah, I try to encourage a positive community, and seeing all, like, the toxicity in the Hello Neighbor community just makes me sad. I don't want any of that bleeding over into my community. I've seen so often that a lot of these people's lives seem to revolve around Hello Neighbor as if nothing else matters, and anything that doesn't go their way, they take as a personal attack. There's more to life than Hello Neighbor. Crazy. I know. You know, meeting a friend in the Hello Neighbor community and then bonding with them further over other mutual interests that you may have is a lot better than just making a friend and talking about nothing other than Hello Neighbor with them. That's pretty much all I needed to say. I mean, I understand that this can apply to literally any other community, but since the Hello Neighbor community is adjacent to mine, I feel like it's my responsibility to, like, kind of speak up and say something. Alright, back to Pass Me for the outro. I'll see you guys later. Okay, and I think that's everything I wanted to talk about. I know it's been a while since the last devlog, but I'm hoping all this information makes up for it. Check out my Patreon if you want to support me and my development on any future projects. Check out my Discord server if you want to take part in my community, and be sure to follow the Game Jolt page for any updates to HNR. I hope you all have an awesome day, and thank you to my patrons Sin, Dana, Jonah, Aether, and Adam. And I'll be sure to see you all again soon, hopefully. Bye-bye.